Hey everybody, it's Jason. It's Jason from Ronin Bodyboards. Going to do another Boog Chat here tonight, 6 to 7. Going to do this for about an hour or so. Hopefully, some people start popping in. We can go over some things. Gosh, it's been over a month since I did one. I know that somebody made a comment on the Facebook. When are we going to get another Boog Chat? So I was like, all right. And I realized I posted all the stuff this morning, and I didn't realize it was Saturday instead of Sunday. I've been doing them on Sundays, but I was like, okay, it's Saturday. Might as well just do it. So anyway, here on Saturday night, hopefully a few more people can make it. Yeah, to shoot all kinds of stuff since the last Boog Chat. Been surfing a lot in the last month, or bodyboarding. I don't surf, but yeah. So I've been bodyboarding a lot. I have 12 sessions this month, and I don't know. I think I was in the 15-ish sessions last month. Hey, Looney, good to see you, buddy. So I got 2 people here now, so that's cool. So yeah, I've been surfing my brains out, and gosh, there's been some combo swells in my area. Not anything super big, but it's been kind of playful and fun. And combo swells from the northwest wind swell, and we're getting some south swells. Summer south swells already started to come showing up a little bit here and there. And there's some spots around here that only break down the south swells, so they're like reefy spots that can be really, really fun. And so yeah, I've been kind of all over through the bay over the last 2 weeks or so, 2-3 weeks. Been all over, just depending on wherever's best. Anyhow, so yeah, 3 people here. Thanks for showing up, everybody. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to say hello or pop your questions into the live chat. Is that warm water? What, like where I live, Looney? No, it's far from warm. No, it's never warm here in Morro Bay where I live. I live in Morro Bay, California. If you looked it up, but it's basically between San Francisco and LA. If you could go right in the middle of that, that's where I'm at in California. So basically, it's between like Santa Barbara and Santa Cruz, kind of. So if you want to narrow the window down a little bit, it's kind of right in between there. It's right by a town called San Luis Obispo. So no, the water here is never warm. I basically wear a hooded 5'4" wetsuit all year round here. And even in the summertime, it doesn't warm up. Like, so Southern California gets warm upwellings that'll come and warm things up down there in the summertime. So they can kind of trunk it down there in the summertime, but you can never go out in the water here without a wetsuit. It's just brutal. I think I've only wore a 3.2 once or twice here. I've had early days I was wearing 4.3s, but over the years I've learned that might as well just get a hooded 5'4", and you can pull the hood off if you get too hot, and you can always let water in. But I never want to get out of the water because I'm cold, so I always kind of buy a really thick wetsuit and just use that all year round. So no, the water here is usually in the 50s, mid 50s is usually the water here. So yeah, it's chilly here all the time. Yeah, I've been obviously I hit the milestone of 500 boards. I know a lot of people have seen that. Hey Sierra, good to see you, buddy. Board volume. He's asking about is there a way to calculate board volume? I know some guys, the guys that CNC shape boards. There's a couple factories in Asia and in Indo that they have full on CNC shaping machines. So they shape out the cores, and so those models that they build in like a CAD software. It's like a 3D model of the board. Those CNC software models can calculate volumes of the core. So you can kind of volume out what the core is going to be depending on the dimensions that way. But that's only the core. Once you start stacking up all the what we call the bodyboard sandwich, all the other materials that get laminated to that core, obviously the volume changes. So what skins you're using and what type of sandwich, bottom slick you're using can all affect the volume of the board. So it really is very, very difficult. It's way easier to volume out a surfboard because all those things they're all CNC shaped pretty much these days. So and then a glassing only doesn't really add a whole lot of volume to a surfboard, where for a boogie board, it adds a lot of volume when you start adding all the skins to the outside of it. So that really can affect the volume of the board. Now, I've seen some other things that they have. They have like these water dunking tanks. Okay, so what it does, you fill like this big old tank up of something of water, and then you have markers around the edge of the tank, or you have an overflow spout that measures offset, and then you can take the whole board and you can dunk that into the water, and then that offsets the water in the tank, and then that will give you the volume of the board, how much the water gets offset. So that's one way to do it, but I'm not going to shove a brand new board. I'm not going to fill up a tank in my driveway, a big old water band, and dunk a board in there just to find out what the volume is of a boogie board. So there's ways to do it, but it's not easily done, especially for a bodyboard. So yeah, no worries. I know there's a lot of people that are curious about that, and I've seen that question online a lot about how to calculate volume of a boogie board. So it really isn't that easy. And everybody, channels, deck contours, then how the nose shaped out on the enemy side, all that can add or subtract volume out of a board too. So you could shape out a basic shape of a board and get a rough volume of that, but as soon as you start doing a massive channel system and deck contours, that can affect all volume as well. So we're going to get into a little bit of that volume talk a little bit later on. I have a board here, that the one that I saved on a deck lamination I'm going to go over tonight, that it's kind of a high volume, interesting concept. So geez, maybe, since I'm a little bit out of order, I was going to talk 500 first, but I'll just go ahead and pull that one out and talk about it right now. Right here. So, gosh, I don't remember the number. It was within the last 10 or so. I built a board for a guy in France. And, I'm human, and I make mistakes. And sometimes the stuff that I build isn't perfect, and I have to quality control stuff. And it's like, oh, geez, that didn't come out as good as I want to. And I wanted it to be. So then you got to ask yourself, is it salvageable for the customer, or should I just basically 86 the board and start over? And so this board, what happened was I had the core shaped, all the channels and everything. Everything was shaped out. I had the bottom slick on. I had all the stringers in the board. It was all bumpered. I went to go laminate the deck skin, and I was doing it with about 3 or 4 other boards, and something happened when I was doing all the lamination, and I had to stop the laminator before I could do this board. And I think maybe I forgot some deck stamps on the deck skin, so I had to stop and for this one board, and then try to relaminate it. And when I relaminated it on the board, I kind of rushed the process. And my laminator, I really need to let heat up for like maybe 5 minutes before I start laminating. Otherwise, it just needs to warm. All the metal and everything that the hot air is coming through needs to warm up. Otherwise, that cools the hot air that goes through the laminator. So I really need to pump some hot air through the whole system and get it all warmed up before I laminate. And I kind of rushed that process when I re-laminated the deck. I was like, I just want to hurry up and get this thing stamped and get it done. And I kind of rushed the process. And I've learned over time that the more I rush, that's when I always make bad things happen when you rush. So it really pays just to slow down and take your time. Otherwise, you're going to mess something up and you're going to have to start over. So that's what happened is I went to laminate the deck of the board. And so what happened, you can see this board has, the standard deck contours like I normally put on a board. But what happened is it just didn't laminate really good through this part of the tail corner right through here. So it just didn't stick. And sometimes you can get in there with a heat gun and kind of fix it, but it was a pretty major part of this corner that didn't laminate to the core, stick to the core. So I just made the decision to start over. I was like, man, I could probably try to save this, but it's not a brand new board. It's going all the way to France, and I didn't want to have any kind of customer service issue. So I'm like, I might as well just rebuild the board from the start. And I very rarely have to do that, where I have to just basically scrap it and start over. And then what that usually means is that I had, obviously I rebuilt the board from scratch and sent it off, and it's fine. It's probably in France by now. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is. But this board I finally got back into. I was like, well, let's see, since it was on here, and the original it had it's a 3 to 6 channel, and everything else about it was good, but so the original deck skin was this teal color, and you can see here that it almost looks like it has a tailpiece on here. I don't know, it's kind of hard to see in the video, but so what happened was I left just this center part of the deck, the original deck skin. I left that on the board, And then I ripped all the deck skin off all around the outside of the contour. So what happened is it made, this board was already what I call a step deck board, where this center bump's already an 1/8 inch thicker. So that way it has a whole nother deck skin and the deck skin backing underneath there. So I added about another 3/16 to that 1/8 of an inch. So it's really almost over 1/4 of an inch of a step now. And then what I did was I just took and I laminated a whole, once I cleaned up all the edges around the outside and got all the other deck skin off all the way around through here, I just I took I also took the original deck skin that runs through the center part, actually wraps over the tail. So even though it's all teal here, you can kind of see there's a little seam that runs through here. But this is part of the tail piece is actually part of the original deck skin that runs all the way up through the center part of the board. And then there's like one big skin that laminated all the way over the top of that. So it really has a high volume in the center part of the board. There's like you can see, I mean, you can see how pronounced the center bump is on this board. It's the biggest step deck I've ever even to laminate. So yeah, it came out pretty cool. I mean, I'm gonna probably just around the house or something, and maybe you know, if somebody ever up here needs a board to ride, I'll just keep it around extra. You know, I always like the. You know, it's hard for me to sell it as like a brand new board. I could put it on the website for a really big discounted price and sell it as is. I've done that on a couple of boards in the past, but I don't do that very often. I usually just keep them around the house, and if somebody comes to the shop and they're walking through here and they're looking, oh, you know, I don't want to spend, you know, 300 plus for a board. I'm just looking to spend something less, then maybe I have a board like this for them if they want to come by. So yeah, anyway, this one came out pretty sweet. It's a good way to save a board, because it was like, okay, well, what do I do with all of this? Yeah, I know. I'm sure there's a few people in here that would probably ride this board. I'm probably going to take it out and ride it just to see how the extra volume. I mean, I'm riding these step deck boards on my boards these days. 420 has it, and so does 500. It has the step deck, but this is like an even more step deck. So it's an interesting, and the rails are extra thin because the skin that I put back on here, I didn't have deck skin backing on it. And I've gone through over that in the past. There's an extra layer of polypropylene deck skin backing that goes on the underneath side of all my deck skins between that and the core. So it adds almost another layer of sealing and cushioning throughout the deck part of my board. So, but this board doesn't have that. It has it on the original deck part of the skin that's underneath here, but it doesn't have it on the new skin that I put down over top of all that. Which is it's pretty interesting, solution to what the problem was. Ciro, you know, I have, like I said, my 500 board and my 420. Let me just grab my 500 board. It's right back here, so we'll go over that real quick. Like my 500 board, you know, it's on social media and whatnot already. And I'll probably be taking this to Maui with me when I go here real soon too. So, you know, it's 3 to 6 channel, blah blah blah. It's all the stuff I usually ride, but this also has the step deck on it too. But it's just an 1/8 inch thicker versus the extra 3/16 of the. It's almost double. The other one's almost double deck. So yeah, Looney, I am doing the board mule to Maui. I'm going to talk a little bit about that here. I just need to get through the 500 board. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked on this. I've ridden it just one time out here out front. I haven't even plugged it yet or leashed it, because my Rio over on Maui just got a bunch of Salty leashes. So he's got one, an orange and black one, that I'm going to put on this board when I get over there. But yeah. Yeah, I am doing the board mule to Maui, so that's the. So anyway, yeah. So this is a pretty cool board. It has, you know, it has the channeled out rails and a real sharp edge rail point here, and then it fades to a little bit rounder up through the front, but it's extra sharp out the tail, just like how I usually put all my boards. This is actually the first board I've ever had any of my personal boards that has a nose piece. Oddly enough, I was like, I don't have a board with a nose piece, so I was like, heck, I'll put an orange nose piece on this one since it's all orange and black and everything. And I kind of mixed the R and the JB stamp on the tail. That's this first board I've ever done kind of that on too. So I don't know, there's a couple cool things on here. Another cool thing about this board is that, you know, I'm only going to ride it on special occasions, and I have a personal goal to ride it with all the people that, you know, I've created a lot of stamps for people over the 5 years plus years I've been doing Ronin, and you know, like, you know, obviously I have Rio stamps, the K2K stamps, and I have, you know, Sterling stamp. And then, you know, this was originally a stamp I did for Jordan Stollard and his Ducky Goes. Instagram. If you guys don't follow Ducky Goes, it's pretty cool Instagram that Jordan has with a little rubber ducky that he puts out in the waves and stuff. Go check it out on Instagram. It's pretty cool Instagram. So this is the Ducky Goes stamp, but then Jonathan, who I did the book map, has just adopted this stamp because he absolutely loves it. So it's all over his boards, but I'm sure it'll get on some boards I build for Jordan in the future too. Dom stamp, the guys at Vector, obviously Jim, Anxious Energy. So anyway, and then Kevin stamps here as well. So I kind of wanted to do this as a tribute to all the people that have bought boards for me. That's kind of, it's cool to do the mosaic of all the Ronin stamps, but to toss in all the personal stamps for all the people that I built boards for. It was just a way to kind of say thank you. Also, the Hawaiian Island stamping. I'm not Hawaiian. I'm as howly as it gets, but I love Hawaii. I've been there quite a bit. I just love it. So, and Hawaii's been so good to me in the body since I've been building boards, and even before. I just have so many fond memories and met so many cool people from Hawaii that it's just, obviously I have a Hawaii stamp that I built for guys over there, but Hawaii means it's a special place for me. And like I said, I'm going to be there in a week from right now. I'll be sitting on Maui, so I can't wait to be there, get back. I try to get at least once every year. And when I go, let's talk about. I can go. All the specs for this board are online, and so you can go check it out. It's got a pretty interesting stringer setup I've never done. It's all carbon fiber stringers, and that's pretty cool. So it has a 1/2-inch diameter, a thick-walled carbon fiber tube in the center, and then it has solid rod stringers on the outside. So that 1/2-inch stringer is actually just a hair stiffer than my 3/4-inch standard stringer, believe it or not. It's a smaller diameter stringer, but it's carbon fiber and it's thicker walled. So it has like a thicker wall on it. So it's like just a stiffer rod, but it's a smaller diameter. And same thing with the outside one. The outside ones are 3/8-inch solid rod carbon fiber that they have even more bounce and pop to them. They're not near as stiff as the 3/4-inch standard stringers, but they have this amazing like flex to them and recoil because of the carbon fiber. So that's a pretty interesting. Hey Nathaniel, good to see you, buddy. Yeah. So yeah, the 500 board's cool. I can't wait to ride it a little bit more. But like I said, I have all the people's personal stamps on there. And basically, I want to ride that board with all of those people. And, there's a few stamps that are missing. I sure wish I had a Trevor Solberg stamp. I made one for him, but I sent it to him, and he has it down in Southern California. I would have loved to have his stamp on there, but I would have had to coordinate all these stamps from other places for the board. I just didn't. It was kind of a last minute thing of me throwing all the personal stamps on there for the riders. But the Boogie Raptor that I've done a few for Russell Pitts. I would have loved to have the Boogie Raptor on the bottom of that too, but I was talking to Russell about that a little while ago. I was like, man, your stamp was missing, and so was Trevor's. But it's just one of those things. Those guys know I appreciate their business and their and how they support the brand. So they know, but they know their part. They're on that board spiritually for sure. But so what I want to do is I want to ride that board with all and get a picture with that board with all the people that have stamps on the bottom of it. And also, my buddy Jim, who does Anxious Energy and does all my screen printing, and he did this Ronin shirt too. He recently sent me a box of just out of the blue, just saying thanks and whatnot. But he did these tie-dyed ones that say Ronin Bodyboards 500 on it. So I have just a small, just a handful of these tie-dyed ones that say Ronin 500 on it. So what I want to do is I want to get pictures with all the guys on the bottom of it. And I pretty much have a shirt for every one of those guys. So I think what I'm going to do is get us both in these shirts and then do a picture with that board. And it'll kind of be like, I think I'm going to call it the 500 Club. If you remember that old show, the 500 Club, way old school TV. Anyway, it'll be fun to kind of try to get pictures with all the guys and ride with them. And preferably I would like to go to where they ride and ride their spots with them with that board. That's kind of, I probably won't ride it much just around here. I have other boards I can ride. And I'm just going to save it for super special occasions. But yeah, so like I said, I'm going to Maui and like I said, I've been to Hawaii quite a few times. And when I have this thing that I've been doing now for quite a few years. I think it was probably my was probably the second year I was doing Ronin. I was going to Oahu. I think was the first one. So I figured, man, I'm going over to. No, I don't think I'm going to be island hopping this time. I think I'm just going to be hanging out on Maui. But I do have plans to come into to Oahu in the fall. So I think I'm just going to be have to push Oahu off till the fall. But when I come to the second year in Ronin, I was going to North Shore, and I was like, man, it'd be a good idea just to throw it out there for people to order a board, and then I bring that board with me when I come to the island, and that way the customer doesn't have to pay for shipping. It's just a great way because shipping, the cheapest way I can ship a board to the islands right now is like $50, and then if you want like priority shipping, it's almost $100. So it can be really shipping can be a deal breaker a lot of times for a lot of guys. They just don't want to spend the extra $100 or $50 to $100 for the shipping on top of a pretty expensive custom board already. So it gets kind of pricey. So what I do is I have two pretty big board bags, and one board bag fits 3 boards, the other one fits 4. So I can bring 7 boards with me to the islands. And so what I do is I just tell people that if they want to put in an order for the board, I'll mule the board over to Maui or Oahu when I go to the islands, and hand deliver it to them. And then it's really cool because I get to meet people. I get to meet my customers and hand deliver the board. I've met some really cool people by doing this, and it saves people some money. And I think it only cost me like $35 to check a boogie board bag on Hawaiian Airlines. So I can get 4 boards all the way over there for $35. I don't mind eating that because it's a way for me to say thank you to some people when I come to the island, and hopefully help them get a dream board made and at a pretty good price, and they don't have to pay shipping. And it's really cool just hand delivering and see the people stoked in person versus it feels good to build a board and mail it off to somebody and then get a message from saying, oh yeah, I love the board, it came out great, can't wait to ride it, all this stuff. That feels really good to me, and that really fuels my fire. But when you physically hand a board to somebody and you meet them in person, it's a whole different transfer of energy, and it's a really cool experience just to see the stoke level on their face when you're handing them the board in person. I don't think there's there might be some shapers that you can you're going to walk into their shop and you can pick up your board and they're going to hand it to you, but for that person to take it to where you're at and deliver it to you, that's a whole different type of service. And I don't know, I just think it's a cool deal, and I really enjoy doing it. So, and it helps me pay for my trip too. I'm not going to be in denial of that. It really, if I can get 6 boards sold, that's a pretty good chunk of money, and it really does help pay for my trip to come visit. So that I'm going to do it every single time I come to the island. So yeah, Looney, I probably could inter-island ship something. I would, like I said, it's only $50 to ship from here. Just ground USPS is only $50 from California to any of the islands. About $50. And gosh, how much cheaper is it going to be just to get? And then I have to find a box and try to get it all boxed up. I bet you the guys at the phone company would probably give me a box and help me out with getting it from the phone company to you on Kauai. I'm sure we could probably work that out. Yeah. I think that's possible. So yeah. Yeah, it's probably like $30 to go from Maui to Kauai, and only 20 more bucks to get it from California to Kauai. So, but yeah, I really would love to get. I've never been to the Big Island or Kauai ever, so those islands are definitely on my bucket list within the next couple of years. And then when I come to those islands, I'm sure there'll be people that'll be interested in the whole mule program and delivering boards. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Well, Looney, I usually have all the boards pre-sold. So yeah, there's just 2 prone, 3 prone boards right now. I think pretty much they're mostly prone boards I'm bringing right now. I don't think there's a true DK board on order through this right now. But I do have that 280 385 board that I've been pushing a lot. It's been on the website for days now. It's a 44-inch kind of round nose DK board that I told everybody out there through social media that I'd sell it for $250. That's it's a ripping deal. I just want to sell the board. Yeah, it's the red one that I've been trying. You've seen it around on social media. And like I said, it's on the website store. But if somebody wants to bring it on the mule thing, that's easy for me because it's already pre-built, and I don't have to spend the next 3 or 4 days before I leave just like cranking to try to get that board out of it. Because I'm starting to run out of time now. Because I have a few boards that I'm working on. Like I said, like let's see, this blue one here is going on the trip. This pink one's also on the trip. The this DK board back here is for my buddy Nick, who did all the drone shoot for me recently. So that one will be done and probably finish. Most of those I'll probably finish tomorrow. Right on, Russell. Yeah. Right on. Thanks for the support and wearing the gear, flying the flag. I appreciate that. It always stokes me out to see somebody wearing one of my gear, a t-shirt or a hat or a hoodie or whatever. It's cool. I have a couple of my neighbors just here in the neighborhood have a shirt. One guy, he's a really good friend of mine, lives in the street. And, we surf. He stand up surfs, but he wears my shirts all the time. I'm like, hey, you're a stand up surfer, and he still flies the flag for me. It's pretty cool. It's like, I love your shirts. They're great. So yeah. I try to I try to use like lightweight cotton when I get my shirts done with Jim Ledbetter at Anxious Energy. He does all my screen printing. So yeah, hit him up if you need some stuff. He does some pretty cool things. Like you can see like this red, yellow, green fade on this shirt's pretty cool. I got some gray versions of these right now, but man, I think I almost like this black one better than I like the gray ones that I have multiples of. I might get some more of these ones done just like kind of like this. This is pretty cool. I don't know, like I said, I like it on the black shirt. It almost looks better than on the gray. I think the color fade's really good on this one, where the other ones are kind of washed out a little bit through the colors, but they're still cool. Oh, I know. Yeah, beanies are on the list. I know my buddy Sterling, who I've made a bunch of boards for. He is a beanie guy, and he's been after me for. He's probably listening right now. He just probably can't comment. He's been after me for some beanies for a while. Yeah, 5 rings beanie. That's okay. 5 rings of beanie it is. That'll be the first one I'll do. Although, I am partial to the original logo, but and the helmet one. All 3 of those are really good. But the 5 rings one, it really is probably my. It's a toss up between. I don't know. Those 3 are just they're really good. All 3 of them are pretty good. So let's see. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers most of the topics. Gosh, I've been here about a half hour now, I guess. So, anybody got any questions or anything? I mean, like I said, I'm really looking forward to Maui. I know Maui's kind of a fickle spot in the summertime. It's south swell or it's absolutely a lake there. So, you can find some like the south like west side kind of has some zones that will pick up a little bit of south swell. I know the last time I was there in summer, I just was in the Lahaina zones pretty much most of the time because I kind of stay up towards Kaanapali, a little bit above that. That zone's the condo that I'm staying in. But I might get down to the big beach a few times, maybe with Rio, or maybe we can trek south or something. But I don't think there'd be the normal spots, the good spots on Maui that most people think about are all kind of winter spots, and none of those places break during the summer months. So it is what it is. I'm just going to be happy to be there. Yeah, looking forward to the warm water for sure. It's such a treat for me being here and always having to ride cold water in a big old thick wetsuit. Yeah, the Lahaina Harbor. That's where I surfed there in that Lahaina Harbor a bunch. That my like two trips ago to Maui when I was there in the summertime, kind of about the same time as now, early July. And there was a day it was almost like chest high right there in Lahaina Harbor, right next to where the boat docks and everything are at. It's kind of a little reefy break there. It's fun. And then there's some spots just on the other side around the harbor mouths and stuff, just like a little bit south of there, little beach zones and stuff. Kind of all longboardy spots. They're not really, it doesn't get big and super heavy there, but it's something, right? It's better than snorkeling. I mean, I love to I'll get out there and snorkel around if it's flat, but I'd rather be riding a wave. I don't care if it's 1-2 foot. It's fun. I'll get out there and get my fix. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to being there, and said I'm really looking forward to. And I've as soon as I put it out there, I was going to Maui. There was about like probably 10 people on Oahu that said, "Oh man, I wish you were coming to Oahu. I would have gotten aboard on the mule program." So that really kind of inspired me up to get to Oahu this fall. Probably early fall is probably what I'll be looking at. Maybe like October before it starts really ramping up there. I know, and you can still get some fun days in the early fall there. You can kind of get skunked, but I know there's a lot of sand on the North Shore in the early fall. It's really usually better later in the winter, but that's okay. I mean, for me, anything's good there. It's always better, almost better than when I'm riding at home, no matter what. So, although fall at home is probably the best time ever around and where I live. It's just beautiful here, and the big swells start coming, and it's almost always offshore here in the fall time. So you just get some beautiful days. So yeah, it looks like we got six people here. I really appreciate everybody for showing up. So if anybody has any questions or anything, fire away. I don't mind taking questions or anything. So yeah, Nathaniel. Yeah, like I said, I'm sure that when I announce my dates for coming to Oahu in the fall, I'm sure those spots we're going to fill up fast. Just from the feedback I got this from when I put it out that I'm coming to Maui, and everybody's just like, man, why are you going to Maui? You should be coming to Oahu. I'm like, well, I had a free place to stay for a week, and I think I went to the North Shore last, and then Maui before that. So I'd been, I went to Oahu the last time I was there, so I kind of want to go back to Maui, even though it is summertime. Russell, no, Jimmy, I met with Jimmy the last time I was there, and really had a great time talking with him and stuff. I really have a lot of respect for the guys at the foam company. They got it. If I was gonna I don't really sell my boards to shops, and Jimmy asked me, he's like, man, I'd love to do like a collaboration with you, and maybe we could do like a Ronin foam company kind of setup on a couple boards, and I, most of the time I'm so busy with custom orders that's usually where I want to try to focus my energy is selling boards directly to customers. And that way, obviously when I sell a board to a shop, they want to make some money in the scenario too. So, and I got to be realistic with that I can't make, right now, if I sell a board to a customer, I make all the profit. If I sell, a board to a shop, they want to buy it at wholesale, and then they want to mark it up and make the profit on it. So if I was going to sell boards to any shop, it would probably be the foam company. And I wouldn't be opposed to a multi-board deal, just a small batch, like maybe 5 to 10 boards, and that's it. I don't really want to get into doing like mass production, repetitive kind of stuff. I really enjoy doing just the custom stuff directly for customers and working directly with the customers to figure out their boards. That's what I love doing. And if I was going to build boards for a shop, usually, okay, we want, 4 prone boards, and we want them from 40, 41, 42, 43, and then we want a few DK boards, and then it gets into like, okay, now I got to I start feeling like repetitive and mass production and that kind of thing, and I don't want to get into those scenarios too much. But like I said, if I was going to sell boards to any shop, it would be the foam company. We got some pretty legit shops here in Southern California. There's just nothing in my area in Northern California. There's no true bodyboard shops anywhere up in the zone. So, if I was, and as far as California goes, there's a couple in Southern California. You got Alternative Surf and 662 and obviously e-bodyboarding. Those are the 3 ones down in Southern California that are kind of, a couple of, Alternative Surf has reached out and 662 has reached out. But like I said, I'm not really too interested in selling my boards in shops right now. I'm not on a level where I can really do mass production of stuff anyhow. So I rather just keep it on the level it is right now. I'm very happy with the how the orders are coming in and how I can get them out. I don't feel too overloaded with, if I took a 20 board order from a shop, another thing is a lot of times they want to do it all on credit too. So I got to build 20. So I build 20 boards. I ship them to the store, and then it's like net 30 to 60 days before they pay me anything for them. Sometimes there can be a deposit on some of the stuff, but a lot of times they don't even want to pay you until they sell all the boards and make their money back. So, and I just don't want to get into a scenario where I got all this money tied up into a big old board order for a shop like that. And, it's just better to stay at the level I'm at. So, yeah. So I guess that was the long-winded answer, but no, the foam company does not carry my boards. Jimmy has personally, he has a couple of my boards. He's ordered a couple customs from me, which is really cool. I think that, that I really feel honored that Jimmy, he owns a bodyboard shop. He could ride any board in that shop, but he still has ordered a couple custom boards from me, and I've seen some amazing pictures of him riding them too. So, yeah, I feel very, very honored that he'd even consider riding my boards when he has an option to ride pretty much any bodyboard made in the world. So, and I know he rides other things, and I don't blame him. If you have that kind of opportunity to ride that many types of brands of boards, I'd be kid in a candy store, you know. Nathaniel, he's the channel rails on your DK board. Yeah, I love channeled rails. Uh, I ride them on all my boards, so But as far as DK goes, I don't think there's not a lot of DK boards out there that I've done the channeled rails on. But I'm telling you, I think that there'd be some benefit for rail hold on a DK board with having them. It's just you gotta warm these guys up. They're everybody's stuck in their routines about what they like and what they want on the board, and sometimes it's too far outside the box for guys wanting to go jump in the deep end of the pool and they don't know how it's going to go. But why not? Obviously, they work. I know they work for proning. So if you're on rail and you're trimming, it's just going to bite into the rail, into the wave face more. Especially the steeper the wave face gets, the more that channeled rail just sticks and bites into the rail and tracks and holds it, and doesn't want to slip out as much. So whether you're on your knee or you're proning, I don't think it's the rail is still going to hold better than just a traditional rail. I believe. It's just gonna have more bite. Sometimes, I mean, like on my 500, the 500 board, I've ridden that once, but man, I almost think that one I might even take and soften up just the front part of the rails from about the midpoint forward. I want to soften it up just a little bit more. That's the beauty of it, is like if I made that for a customer and chipped it off and it was just kind of too bitey. But if it's my board, I can bring it back into the shop and sand it down a little bit more and roll it all out and kind of tweak it a little bit or do minor repairs on it. I do that a lot on my boards. It just fine tuning the rails, because I beat my rails up bad on my boards, especially on my leash side. I've talked about that a bunch from leashes, and I'd love to have some Ronin leashes, but I'm never going to pay somebody to build a leash that's just like status quo. I got some ideas for leashes that are going to be less abrasive for the board. That's the one of the thing about leashes. They make them really nice and soft on the inside for your arm, but on the outside they have all these crazy buckles and metal pieces and huge hard loops and leashes, and then some of the branding and logos and things they put on them are all raised up and puffy, and so anything that's out there and abrasive on the outside. Well, I arm paddle a lot when I'm in the water, so I swim a lot with my arms. So, and I'm a bicep leash guy, so when I reach out and I come across like this, my bicep comes across the rail of my board, and it just absolutely wrecks that one side of my rail. That's what does 80% of my boards that I have. They're all the leash side rail is just wrecked. The other side's fine. I've shown a bunch of pictures. If you go back and look at some of the Boog Chats, I've talked about that a lot through some of the earlier Boog Chats where I'm showing all my boards. Just board after board, you can look down the rail and look at the pin line and everything. It just looks like something chewed it up. Yeah, Nathaniel, I'm glad you like the channeled rails. And like I said, I've only heard a couple people get it and then be like, man, it just has too much bite. Almost everybody who tries channel rails, whether it's DK or most of their on prone boards, but everybody likes it. Once you ride it once and you get comfortable with how that rail, the back half of the rail bites into the face, it's awesome. And if that, like I said, it doesn't go hard rail all the way through the front. The front I really like to keep softer, so that way when you're leaning forward, that the rails don't kind of bite on there, and it's a softer entry, and it kind of knifes out the back. That's kind of what the thinking is on the rounded to sharp rails. And I mean, like I said, this one it might still be just a little bit too pointy right up through the front part of the rail. And like I said, it gets to right about the midpoint of the board, or the wide point, and then I really start sharpening it up, because like when I put the rail pieces on, they are really sharp. And then what you do is you go back and you sand down this edge, and then you go back and finish rolling, right? So how much you sand off, you can control how sharp this edge is. And what a lot of people don't think about too is that how much you sand off of all this stuff also affects the width of the board too. So if you don't sand as much off the rail, the board will end up being just a touch wide. But if you over sand, then it makes the board smaller dimensionally. So you got to think about that when you're laying and you're cutting the core of the board, because you got to cut the core so once you stack everything up, it finishes out the right thing. And you have to consider all these factors: the thicknesses of the skin, all the stuff. It all factors into how the board finishes out. So it's a pretty complicated sandwich that I don't think people really understand. I've talked about the bodyboard sandwich on a few of these book chats in the past too. So it's always good to kind of go back and in your leisure, if you got time and you're just sitting around, you need something pumping in your head and kind of listen to some of these things. There's all kinds of cool knowledge and things throughout the history on my boards and some of the ones I've done and explained. So yeah, it's really fun to kind of go through some of the to look back and how my boards have evolved from just being simple clip crest and standard channel boards into 500 boards later now. I'm to think when I started running, I was so stoked that I when I got to 100, and now I'm to 500, and I'm just like, holy cow, the sky's the limit. How many boards can I build now? It's like, I was just amazed that I got to 100 boards, and like I said, now I'm over 500 and counting. So, and I'm not slowing down. I got enough materials. Bottom slicks are the big ones because it only comes from one place in the world, really. So I got enough bottom slick to build another 100 boards easy. So probably even more than that. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to stop building boards for a very long time. I did just get some yellow and blue. Maybe I'll pull those colors. It's the standard yellow and blue. But what's really cool is it's the U.S. yellow and blue versus the overseas skins that are all the fancy colors. You'll see a lot of the other U.S. manufacturers use the 5 basic U.S. skins: the black, white, red, yellow, blue. What is it? Black, white, red, yellow, blue. I'm missing one. Red. Yeah. So I have black, red, yellow, and blue now of the U.S. skins. So it's the standard. You see a lot of the other U.S. manufacturers, they use these two colors, and this skin is really, really nice, man. I really do like the U.S. made skins. I think they're almost a little bit superior to the stuff that I get from overseas, but they only, like I said, they only come in the 5 basic colors. So if you see any of the fancy colors, the pinks and the oranges and any of the teals and all that stuff, those are all skins that are made overseas. So they're still good and they still work great. I just think that these skins just are a little bit more durable, and they're just a touch thicker too. So once again, that factors into the dimensions of all the boards too. When you go stacking up, and it affects the volume, like what we were talking about before, is that the thicker the skin that you stack up, it affects the whole volume of the board. So that's pretty cool. I can't wait to get. I got one board that I'm going to be using some yellow on here. One of the boards in the stack here, but I haven't got an order for the darker blue. What I really want to do is mix that dark blue with this light blue. I have this is skin, and I have slick in this light blue. So I think it'd be kind of cool to do like an all blue board, just kind of mix up the light blues and the dark blues, and so I could see myself, even if it's just a website board, building something like that. Lenny, I remember that. I think I remember seeing that Anomaly logo. It's like a big A, kind of, it's offset. Or no, is that what the Anomaly logo was? Yeah, the blue skin is, well, the blue. This is the blue bottom slick, which is really good. But I have the same color in the skins too. I don't have any of it out here right now. But yeah, I have the same color in the skins. Yeah, but that blue skin is really good too. So it's really workable. That's what I like about that. So that's what's good about one good thing about the thinner skins that come from overseas is they're they're easy to manipulate into all the curves and the contours and the fancy tails. They're just easier to work and manipulate than the thicker skins. The thicker skins are kind of hard to push into all the stuff. You got to really be gentle with them, because or you have to really warm up the skins. That's one of the secrets about getting the skins to go into all the contours and everything, is you got to warm stuff up so it becomes more pliable. Hey, David, good to see you, man. How's it? Hopefully you're getting some waves over there in Honolulu, David. I wish I could be there, but I guess I'm coming in the fall. So early fall is the plan for Oahu, and I'm definitely gonna have a Walls day. I don't care if it's flat and whatever. I'm definitely gonna come over to Walls whenever I get there. I'm gonna spend the whole morning and afternoon there. I think I'm just gonna make a day of hanging out in town. My next trip to Oahu. Yeah, David, if you want to order a board, you can hop over to Maui and pick it up. I did that 2 trips ago when I was on Maui. A guy jumped over from Oahu and got board. So yeah, if you want to do that, hit me up, David. We can work out the details and stuff. But I need to know soon. Like I said, there's only really one spot left. I wanted to take 2 boards with me to Maui, but I'm willing to let one go to have another spot if somebody else wants to go. But right now I have one spot, so if you wanted it, you can have that. And then I have potentially one more spot. I have to give a second board for me, and I'd do that. But if you want to get a board, David, just hit me up on social or email, or you might even have my number. Just hit me up if you want to get a board and hop over. Yeah, Nathaniel, I appreciate you showing off my boards, man. I know there's a couple guys that there at the Wall Zone that have my boards, so it's really cool to have a cool little group of people that kind of ride that area with my boards. It's really cool. I really need to spend a day there. I've never even paddled out at Walls, even though I've been out at Ala Moana and off of Diamond Head and a couple other spots there in town, but I've never really been right out at the Wall Zone. I really want to go. It's going to happen next trip for sure. I sure wish I would almost come in there in the summertime, because I know it can really be really fun summertime on the town side. I've never been to Oahu in the summertime. I'll always come in the winter. So I'm usually on North Shore side most of the time when I'm there in the winter. I don't really go to town unless there's no swell and we're searching, Yeah, shoot. Well, shoot, if anybody's got any other questions, hit me up. I got one other board on, maybe going to Oahu, shipping to Oahu before another board I got to build before I leave too. So I got all the details for it for a guy. I just haven't really worked out the payment and everything, but he's in line after the boards that I just showed you right back here. I have one more on order that's going to Oahu. So yeah, that's cool. And really, I don't really want to take on a whole lot more than that. Maybe until I get back, I don't like taking a bunch of orders and then bailing out on somebody for a week and going on vacation. It feels kind of weird to me. So I can kind of crank extra hard and get everything off my plate, and then I feel there's not something looming on over my head while I'm over on hanging out having fun, and I feel like I should be working getting somebody's board done. So yeah, I'll be cranking through everything. I don't like to leave things half built. I mean, I have to sometimes, but I don't like it. It doesn't feel good to me. Yeah, and I can't count how many. I really like the marketing. You say you show my boards off to other people around. That's really how I like to spread the word about my board brand. I mean, obviously, social media is a pretty big tool for getting what I do out there. But there's something about a grassroots type of thing where you make a board for a guy who in his own that doesn't. A bunch of guys maybe have heard of my board brand, but they've never gotten to see a board, and then you get to. You send them a board, and then they get to hold it firsthand. They get to see it. It's a whole different thing instead of seeing pictures on Instagram. And then all of a sudden and then you have a firsthand review of how the board rides for the person, and that lots of times leads into an order for me. And I love those kind of referrals when somebody, a friend of somebody I've built a board for, sees it like, oh man, I'd love to have one of those. Well, I've gotten so many orders that way, and I really do like that type of scenario, man. I really, and then what you do is you got two guys that are coming together with my boards, and they go out and ride them together, and boards bring people together, and that only leads to fun and friendships and all kinds of cool stuff, man. That's one of the byproducts of all this stuff is all the fun times and the friends made along the way. Sure, they're cool boards and whatnot, but all the experiences that you're shared by, having the connection of just a board. You have a board, and you both have Ronins, and let's go ride together, and it's a really cool thing. How much more stiffness will a second mesh add versus one mesh? Well, you're talking about so really slick mesh is really the standard for where the mesh is put. So when you have a piece of core, you can laminate mesh between the bottom slick and the core, and then you can laminate it between the deck skin and the core. Okay, so what happens though is, if you're using proper mesh, I know that there's a couple different styles of meshes I've seen out there, but really the best stuff is, in my opinion, there's a few different styles, but the diamond shaped mesh is really, this is it right here. This is stuff I use. So if you look at it, it's kind of a diamondy shaped mesh, right? Some of them are rectangular, and you see them put them sideways at a 45 degree, but then there's like a rectangular thing that's sideways, and I'm like thinking that's not going to give you an even flex. So I think that this stuff, this shape, and then I've also seen some that are kind of like an octagon shape too. Those kind of seem like they might be as good or in the same ballpark to something like this that expands evenly. You can see this stuff when I pull on it, that the diamonds kind of stretch out, right? So if you think about that, when the lamination happens, this stuff's getting sandwiched in between the slick and the core, say. And what's happening is it's getting stretched because, you're squishing these things together with pressure. It's not only heat that's getting blasted in there, but you're also pushing down on that with a big roller that rolls over. It has pressure that's pushing down on everything. So what's happened with that pressure is it takes the materials and stretches them. Okay, so what happens is so what it does is it adds pre-tension to the lamination, at least the way that my laminator works. I know not all laminators work the way mine does, but if it's done proper, you should be putting pre-tensions into these laminations. They're not just dead, They have, if it doesn't rocker a little bit through the lamination, you're not pre-tensioning the and what this stuff does is, if you just put a piece of slick without this, that slick will stretch a little bit through the lamination while you're laminating. And then when it first comes off the laminator, the whole board, the piece of core is completely flat. But then when you laminate it and you stretch the skins out there, and then they expand through when they're hot. And when you pull the board right off the laminator, it'll have a little bit of reverse rocker in the bottom, like when you're just laminating the slick. And then as it cools, you'll be amazed on how reverse it goes, because what's happening is the slick is cooling and it's shrinking. So when it expands, when it gets hot, it expands. When it cools, it shrinks, right? So just a skin or a slick lamination will stretch and then create tension in a lamination. What mesh does is it accentuates all of that. Okay, so this adds another layer within the lamination that is stretching and adding even more tension into the lamination. Okay, so on the bottom side, now you're asking the concepts between where are you putting the mesh and why is it there and how is it being utilized? Okay, so if you're prone riding on it, like I said, most of the board, almost all my boards, you can see this board has mesh. You can see the little waffle pattern that's through the bottom here, right? Okay, so this just has slick on the bottom, or mesh on the bottom. So when you're prone riding, you're gonna flex the board up this way, right? And what you're doing is you're taking all that mesh and slick and everything else that's back here, and you're stretching it, right? You're expanding all those, just like what I was doing before with the diamonds. You're expanding these diamonds as you're flexing the board, right? And this thing wants to go back. It's going to want to recoil back to the shape it originally was. That's its natural state. Like this is its natural state. Once you start flexing it, it's not its natural state, and it's pulling back. It's pulling back even harder because it has that mesh layer in there. So it's gonna that mesh layer adds recoils and snap and pop and life into the board. So and stiffness, obviously. So it does all those things. But it also adds a little chatter dampening. So like if you're like a little bit going really fast and maybe there's some offshore winds almost always the culprit, like with board chatter. If you got wind coming up the face of a wave and it's because it's blowing offshore and you're riding, that's when sometimes you'll get that little board chatter. This helps dampen that chatter just a little bit too. I've noticed that over the years. Okay, so now when you go to put a deck or a mesh on the deck side, now what you're doing is you're introducing another tension, right? You're increasing the tension on the top side of the board. That's the thing is now, like I was talking about, after you laminate the bottom, it's very reversed, rockered out. And then you go and you put the stringer in the board or stringers, whatever is going on. And then that starts pulling the board a little bit more flat. And then when you go and you laminate the deck side of the skin on, what that does is it adds you're stretching that out over and laminating it to the core, but you're also stretching it. And as it cools, it pulls it in the opposite direction. And you end up with a flat or a little bit rockered board. That's usually the ideal scenario. Is just having obviously a lot of guys like flat boards, but the death of a board for me is reverse rocker. You know, if you're riding it, I mean, some guys swear, but some guys like a little reverse rocker, but not for me, man. So anyway, as far as mesh goes on the deck, so what happens now is on the deck side, especially when you're prone riding, let's talk about the forces that are happening. Like I talked about on the bottom, when you flex it like this, you're stretching and pulling the diamonds of this. In that scenario, you're expanding these diamonds because you're pulling and you're stretching them in this way, right? But on the deck side, what's happening is you're basically compressing these diamonds, right? You're taking and you're pushing them together because on the deck side, you're making it smaller. It's getting longer on the bottom and shorter on the top because that's how you're flexing the board. And that's for prone riding. Now, I think when it comes to deck mesh, I think there's probably I just think that mesh in general works better in expansion than compression. So on the deck, if you're on a prone board, it has way more benefit to just putting it on the bottom. On the top side, it's going to add a little bit of stiffness, a little bit, but I don't think you get the same. You're not getting the benefits of the snap and the recoil in compression as you do when it's getting expanded. So, but now let's talk about now. Okay, that's prone, but when you go to start decaying, it's totally different because now your forces are completely different on the board. You're not grabbing the nose and flexing around your elbows and expanding the bottom. You're almost flexing the board in the opposite direction. You're almost taking it in reverse because you're pushing down with your foot and you're pushing down with your knee or your foot. So basically you're taking the board and you're almost reverse rocking it out a little bit because of how your knees hit your knee. I'm ready to foot or somebody. My shin's over here and my foot's over here. You almost kind of take the forces almost want to make the board go reverse. So I think that for decaying, there might be almost more benefit. I mean, I still believe there's some good things for it on the bottom because once you go into like a big deep bottom turn, your board's definitely going to be flexing the normal direction, even if you're decaying. So there's going to be times where I know it's good on the bottom, but there'll be certain times when you're planing out and you're pushing the board almost in reverse, where it might have some benefits to having some deck mesh because you're going to be expanding the deck mesh, and then it might have some more recoil and pop in that scenario. So I just think that it's really good on the bottom, and only in certain cases does it make sense on the top. If you need a stiffer board, I would always recommend going with a second stringer or an additional stringer to your normal setup versus deck mesh. So yeah, I just think that deck mesh isn't an answer for stiffening a board. I think additional stringers are a way better solution to stiffening a board up a little bit. And if you ride a single stringer board and you still like it to flex a little bit, and then all of a sudden you have a double stringer board and gosh, it's too stiff now. Then there's other options to do. You go with a short setup where you still get some flexier up around the nose corners, but then you got a really stiff tail. Or you can go a V setup. A V setup is actually, you get way more flexier nose corners and real stiff tail in a V setup too. So there's lots of cool stringer setups that solve the problem of how you stiffen up a board versus deck mesh. And sometimes deck mesh, because like I said, through the lamination process, bottom slick is more rigid, obviously, than skin. So there's some things that happen with deck skin. Deck skins want to stretch even more than the bottom slick, just because they're more spongy and more flexible, right? So through the lamination process, the deck skins actually stretch probably if you were to somehow measure how far it stretches through the lamination, it probably stretches further than the bottom slick, just because the bottom slick is not going to push and stretch out as far. So what happens though is then you start putting mesh into that deck skin layer, and it adds even more stretch to it. And what happens is then when it starts to cool, I've done some deck mesh boards, and it tends to what I call potato chip it up a little bit, where you get a little bit of nose to tail rocker and you get a little bit of side to side rocker. And sometimes that's not such a good thing, but don't be sorry, David. I'm just glad people are here and somewhat taking part of this stuff. I watch when you can, and there's the replays are always an option too. And if you're watching this in a replay and you weren't able to be here live, just throw a comment down below if you got a question about anything we're talking about. And I monitor all this stuff, and I'll answer questions later on if you're watching the replay. Just comment below, and I'll answer your question as best I can. So yeah, I mean, deck mesh is okay, but I in limited situations, I almost always think an additional stringer is probably a better answer for a sticker board. Oh gosh, we're about at 7 o'clock. So, anybody's got any other comments or questions? Fire away. Otherwise, it's about dinner time for me, I think. What about concave on the deck? Just like a straight concave on the deck side, almost like in the like the belly cuts and things maybe we've done in the past is kind of what you're talking about, or like a spooned out kind of deck or something, and maybe. Yeah, well, I mean, I've done like the little belly cuts, David. Like on some of the tombstones, I've done some belly cuts and stuff. Yeah, I mean, those are cool. Yeah, it kind of locks your hips and belly into the board, but maybe taking it up into the deck of the board further might be an option of doing it. Like if you do a whole board that has a full concave on it. Remember through the lamination process, when you're squishing the materials down, you have to get in there and do any area that the roller can't hit. The roller only gets the flat areas, and then everything else is done by hand. So if you have like if you have like a single concave bottom, that whole bottom, the roller is not going to hit it when it goes to laminate. You got to do all that. You got to get in there and rub all that out by hand. So it'd be the same thing on the deck side with it. So it's kind of I don't want to say it's a difficult lamination. It's probably almost more difficult than doing a multi-channel system, because you have that roller that runs across the ribs, and then all you got to do is push into all the individual channels. So and also what happens in that scenario is the roller has like I said, it has all that weight on it. And what happens is that if you only have the 2 points on the outer part of say if it's a single concave bottom, the roller is pushing super hard on those outside edges, and all that weight that would normally be spread across the whole roller going across the flat surface, all that weight now is just pushing down on those two outside edges. And then like I said, there's how everything like laminates it's a really complicated scenario, especially in a big single concave scenario. So on the deck side, I could probably get in there and do a little bit, but I'd probably want to leave a little bit on the outside just to have a little bit of flat surface for the roller to land on, because like I said, it gets really, what ends up happening is you're going to take those outside, like the outside corner edges of the rails are really going to get shoved and pushed down because there's so much weight just on those two spots versus it getting distributed over a flat surface or multi-ribs kind of scenario. Hope that makes some sense, but yeah, I mean, it's possible. I think that doing some single concave, a little wide belly cut through the thing is definitely doable. I know, like I said, like with the 500, not the 500 board. The 500 board is a good example of that too. Also, because like this board has the raised deck on it, so the center part of the 500 board, like that other board that I saved, this is an 1/8 inch thicker than the outside, like the top of the rail. So it's kind of hard to see with it because it's all blacked out, but. So this whole section is just raised up to have an 1/8 inch more volume in the center part of the board, and so yeah, it really does. It's a really cool setup, man. I really wish more people were more eager to try some of all the contours and things. But what happens now is when it's laminating. So when you go to laminate this, the roller only hits across this center part, the raised up section. the roller doesn't hit any of the deeper part of the contour or this outside rail edge. The roller doesn't hit any of that. So all of this has to be, I have to be in there with my hands pushing down on all this part of the lamination to get any of this to stick. So it'd be kind of like the reverse of that if the whole center part of this was hogged out. And you might also want to consider that if you're going to be hogging all that out of the center part, you're losing volume out of all that too. So you're going to be losing some buoyancy and float and everything else. And also it'll increase the flex of the thing too, because you're taking the mass out of it and you're thinning it out through those sections, so it'll be a little bit more flexy too. So there's ways to offset that. Is just start with a thicker board. If you know you're going to be doing all these step things or taking a bunch of channels and all this stuff, and you're worried about the volume loss, you just start with a thicker board and then you hog that all out, and then you end up with a little bit more volume. But that was my original idea with all this step stuff here, is that I really liked the thin feeling of a rail in my hands, and I didn't want it to feel thicker out on the rails. So that's kind of how I came up with this idea, is that just step all this outside part down 1/8 of an inch, and then you get all the volume in the center part of your chest, like when you're paddling or anything like that. All the volume, or trying to paddle to get into a wave, all the volume of the board is right underneath your chest where you want it to be. And then you're outside, when you're grabbing onto your rails, you don't have this big chunky rail in your hand, but you still have a very thick, a lot more volume in the center part right underneath your chest when you're paddling. And obviously my channeled systems, all these multi-channels, this all takes volume out of the board too. So in order to get some of that back, then you just start with a thicker board and you thin out the outside rails and you take stuff out of it, and then you still end up with volume in the board, but you can still do all the contours without losing the volume. That all makes sense. Yeah, I've seen some really cool knee boards that have the nose scoopy thing. Yeah, Looney. There's some, I think Wagner, I think, had some knee boards that I've seen. Some guy, I've talked a little bit about that. There was a guy out at RingCon one day here down the Santa Barbara Carpinteria area. Obviously, everybody knows the RingCon point here in California. I've been out there quite a few times, but one day there was a guy that out there on a knee board, and he was just crushing it, man. It was the oddest looking spooned out, like spoon shaped knee board. It was like a 1/4 inch thin in the back. It was a hard glassed board. It wasn't a boogie board style soft. It was hard glassed, but it was really spooned out. But the tail went super thin, but it had more volume in the outside and was scooped out through the deck of it. I don't remember. I think the bottom probably was a double concave or something, but the whole deck of it was very, very scooped out. But the rails were really thick, and then there was way more volume up and around the nose. But the guy was just crushing it. He was catching some huge outside wide ones at RingCon, and he was just flying past everybody. It was just insane, man, to see that guy ride the scooped out knee board thing. It was really cool to see. I went paddling right up to him. I'm like, what the heck are you riding? That thing is so interesting looking. And we had a quick little chat, and he showed it to me. But yeah. And that's some things I definitely want to do coming in the future. Is I did the Boog mat a while back, and I have some ideas about how to improve that. I'm gonna maybe talk about that maybe in the next Boog Chat, because we're starting to run out of time, and I want to kind of wrap this up. But I got some ideas to kind of refine. I'm gonna make a thinner version of it, so we'll probably talk about that later on another Boog Chat. But that I know there's some other some Pipo shapes I really want to get into as well. Pipo and Elias. I don't want to go too long with Elias shapes, but there's some really cool wood Pipo shapes that I really want to make boogie versions of here real soon. I mean, obviously the Tombstone all started with that. The Tombstone was kind of my original Pipo influenced boogie board, but there's some other really cool wooden Pipo shapes that I want to explore, making it soft and boogie shape, but all boogie materials, but some cool Pipo shapes. And Jonathan, who I built the Boog mat for, he and I have actually had a couple conversations about that. So that's going to be coming up soon too, man. I really want to get into mashing up some other, be influenced by some other things. I mean, does it have to always be a clip crescent standard channel board? And that's what a boogie board's supposed to be. I mean, it's fun to experiment with these other shapes and be influenced by other sports and other styles of riding, and trying to incorporate some of those ideas into boogie board materials. And I really want to explore a lot of that in the future. Yeah, I bet that. I mean, that board is the tombstones are Pipo influence. I mean, that's hands down. That's where it came from. I just got on there and started shaping or searching Pipo shapes, and I mean, I had an idea that of the basic shape I wanted, but it all came from that. But there's lots of other shapes too. So that there's some really cool, like some swallowtail stuff and some really thin, longer stuff and thinner shape, thinner boards and a little bit longer. There's some stuff I'm going to experiment with that here real soon too. So yeah, there's all kinds of cool stuff coming up. So stay tuned and keep watching and comment and like. And I really appreciate all the support everybody gives me. It really does keep the fires burning for all this. It's a lot of work. I'm just one guy keeping all this together. There's most of the people out there have multiple people getting their brands done, and it's all me. So I love doing this, and I'm not going to stop anytime soon. So definitely appreciate all the support and everything, and comments, and everybody showing up today. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, Nick, thanks for showing up. I guess this is, at least you commented once. Your board's almost done. I don't know if you saw it earlier. I'll probably finish it tomorrow, Nick. It's right here. Go. I got all the stringers in it. It's all bumpered out. It just needs the deck lamination. So I'll laminate the deck and get the rails on it tomorrow. Right on. Okay, well, yeah. Well, you got to see half of it get built, Nick, when you were here last weekend. It's just I was sitting around waiting for stringers most of the week. So I started working on the other 3 boards ahead of yours just because I figured I might as well get those up to needing the stringers in the meantime. So, but stringers are here. They're all in the boards, and I'm going to be wrapping up that batch probably tomorrow and getting on the rest of them. So anyhow, appreciate everybody showing up. I'm going to wrap it up and get some dinner. Thanks for coming out and being part of this, and I really do appreciate everybody showing up and the support. Hey, thanks, Glenn. I appreciate it. I know it's I appreciate you showing up all the way from Australia. You might be one of the first guys from Australia that's maybe been in here live. I haven't had too many guys down there actually make it. So thanks for showing up. Appreciate it. Yeah, spread the word. And I have quite a few boards in Australia at this point, and then I can definitely ship boards down there. It's not the cheapest. It's not the cheapest shipping scenario, but if you want the board bad enough, we can work out the details. So spread the word and follow along and like and do what you do. Subscribe if you want to, but I don't do all that stuff. If you feel like subscribing, great. If not, if you're following along on Instagram, you're gonna know when I'm gonna do these things. So. And they're always available to watch in the replays, so do that too. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. I'm gonna say ciao for now and sign off. Appreciate it for everybody being here. Thanks a lot. Stay tuned for more stuff.